Okay. We're in a new chapter, chapter 7. And chapter 7 deals with percentages. And in lesson 7.1, we're going to take a look at percents and fractions. So we've seen what a percent looks like. We see an example of it here on the screen. The example that I have you on the screen is 25%. Now, we've seen percents in different aspects of our lives. You've seen it probably today when you got your test scores, you got a percentage. So, test score is an example of percent. Another thing that's an example of percent that you may have seen today is loading of video or music or anything of that matter. So you've seen percentages. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is, what does percent mean? Well, percent is a ratio, which we've talked about in chapter 6, but it's a very specific ratio. This ratio is a number that is divided by 100. So you're going to get a value for this, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the ratio of that number by 100. So when we are writing the first part, I want to write a percent as a fraction. So here's the first thing that we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take whatever that percent is and put that number over 100. Once we've done that, we're going to reduce this fraction. So let's take a look at these examples. I have example A, and I have it at 39%. So step 1 tells me I need to put that number over 100. So when I do that, it's going to look something like this. It's going to look like the fraction of 39 over 100. Now that I've done that, my job is to reduce that fraction. And for this specific one, I cannot do that. This is as lowest terms as it is. So the fraction for 39% is 39 over 100. Okay? For example B, I have 80%. And 80% written as a fraction over 100 is 80 over 100. Now, this is not in lowest terms, so I have to reduce this down. And I can divide both the top and the bottom by 20, which then reduces it to 4 over 5. Okay? Next, we're going to write a fraction as a decimal. So what we want to do is our goal, especially if it comes out evenly, I want to be able to get my denominator to 100. So I want to see if I can write this, my denominator, as 100. So in order to do that, I would have to multiply the bottom by 2. So since I multiplied the bottom by 2, I'll have to multiply the top by 2. So 27 multiplied by 2 will give me 54 over 100. And since this is the ratio of that number over 100, the percent we here will have will be 54%. Example B, again, we're going to try to make my denominator 0. To do that, I'd have to multiply this by 4, which means I'd have to multiply the top by 4. And then 13 multiplied by 4 gives me 52. And 52 over 100 as a percent would be 52%. Okay? So if you were to give these a try, I want to write the percent as a fraction. So we have to remember the steps from page 1 in order to solve this. So the first thing we have to do is, again, I'm going to write this number over 100. So I'm going to put 51 over 100. And then I have to check and see if I can reduce this fraction. And if you notice, you cannot. So this is the lowest terms as it gets. For example, B, I can write this as a fraction of 65 over 100. And this one you can reduce. You can reduce it to the value of 13 over 20. Okay? Now, for these ones, I want to be able to write these fractions as percents. So I want to do the reverse. Now I want to see if I can get my denominator 0. Same thing for A and B. So what I have to do to the denominator is I have to multiply the denominator by 5, because 20 times 5 gives me 100. And since I did that to the bottom, I must do the same thing to the top. So 11 times 5 gives me 55. And 55 over 100 is going to be 55%. For example B, I have to multiply the bottom by 4, because 25 times 4 gives me 100. And that means I have to do the exact same thing to the top. So 4 times 4 is 16. So I get 16 over 100. 16 over 100 written as a percent is 16%. Okay? So essentially, this is a little chart to help you determine what we can find if we wanted to take a fraction and bring it to a percent, or a percent and make it into a fraction. And decimals are going to be a tremendous help when you are looking for different percents and fractions. So let's say we have something like, I don't know, let's say I have something like 3 over 25, for example, as a fraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide 3 divided by 25. So if you took 3 divided by 25 in your calculator, it's going to get you to a decimal of 0.12. Now, if I want to make that decimal into a percent, all I have to do is multiply the decimal by 100 and attach a percent to it. So if I multiply this by 100, so if I multiply 0.12 by 100, I'm going to get 12, and then I just attach the percent to it. So 3/25 is the same thing as writing 0.12, which is the same thing as writing 12%. So again, so say if I had something like 23% in my problem, all I'd have to do is take 23 divided by 100, and that would equal 0.23. Okay. One of the things that they're going to be talking about in your homework is being able to discover probability and be able to write probability as a percent. So we talked about probability in chapter 6, and our goal here is, let's take a look at our, say we were given a deck of uh, cards and had the alphabet on it. So we have, how many letters are there in the alphabet? There are 26, and I want to know the probability as a percent of me drawing, say, an E. So if there are 26 cards in this deck, and there's only one of them that has an E on it, that means I have a 1 in 26 chance of getting an E in this card. And if I were to make that into a decimal, it comes out as, now again I'm rounding, it's going to be 0.04. It's actually 0.038, but I rounded to the nearest hundredth. So I got 0.04. Now if I were to write that as a percent, this would equal 4%, because all I have to do is multiply that value by 100 and then attach the percent sign to it. So I would have a 4% chance of me drawing that letter E from this deck of cards. If we look here on the bottom, we have a story problem. The story problem is red. It says an airplane security screener searches the luggage of 3 of every 10 passengers that brings their luggage to the ticket counter. If you are one of the persons in a group of 10 passengers, what is the probability that you will be chosen to have your luggage searched as a percent? So if they're telling you that in 10 passengers, 3 of you will be searched. So that means I have a 3 out of 10 chance of getting searched. Which means if I were to bring that as a decimal, 3 divided by 10 would be 0.3. And then if I wanted to make that into a percent, I'd multiply 0.3 by 100, which then would be 30%. So I'd have a 30% chance of being searched from these 10 passengers. Okay? Again, we're going to do a little experimental probability of drawing a diamond as a percent. So we talked about theoretical probability and experimental probability. So I want to see if I can draw a diamond here. So if let's see here, I'm going to click this, and will I draw a diamond? Nope. How about now? Nope. How about now? Nope. Nope. Actually, these are diamonds. I'm sorry. Anyway, so thinking about it, if we were to make a probability of being able to draw these cards, what would be the probability of me getting a diamond? First off, let's make this as a fraction. So how many cards are in a deck? Well, there are 52. And how many of those cards are going to have diamonds on them? And I think the answer would be for each one. So they'd have what? They'd have a diamond for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we got a jack, a queen, a king, an ace. So there'd be what? 13? 13, if that's correct. So that means I have 13 over 52. If I were to write that as a decimal, it would be 0.25. And if I want to write that as a percent, it would be 25%. Okay? And the last thing that we're going to talk about today is being able to find a percent of a number. So if I wanted to find a percent of a number, all I'd have to do is this. First thing I would have to do is convert a percent into a fraction. Once I've done that, I'm going to multiply the fraction and by that number, whatever number that they're asking for us. So if you look at the story problem, it says that 90% of the flights that left a certain airport yesterday departed on time. If there were 150 flights that left from the airport yesterday, how many of them departed on time? So they're telling us that 90% of flights are on time. So if I were to write that as a fraction, it would be 90 over 100. And then all I got to do is multiply it by the value, which is 150 over 1. So now, if I take 90 and multiply it by 150, I get 13,500. And on the bottom, I get 100. So now 13,500 divided by 100 will give me 135 flights. So that means that if it's 90% that they're going to leave on time, if there was 150 of them, that means 135 of them left on time. And that is being able to use percents and fractions. Hope this helps. Until next time.